Rupert Murdoch's media empire in damage control right now after the phone hacking scandal shut down his British tabloid News of the World. This week, his chief executive has apologized and resigned. The boss at Dow Jones, also owned by News Corp, also resigned. And now an apology letter from Rupert Murdoch himself. Here is part of it. It appeared in some British newspapers today. He says the News of the World was in the business of holding others to account. It failed when it came to itself. We are sorry for the serious wrongdoing that occurred. We are deeply sorry for the hurt suffered by the individuals affected. We regret not acting faster to sort things out. I realize that simply apologizing is not enough. Well, still, we'll get more details about the scandal, I'm sure, in the coming days and weeks. Even Nadia Bilcek here with me. More on the man himself, though. Rupert Murdoch, he has built an empire, in the sense of the word. Sometimes we throw that around. He truly has an empire.
And on many continents. Yeah. And this is a man, this must be one of the hardest times in his 80 years. Yeah. And it all began in Adelaide, Australia. He was born in Adelaide. He was studying at Oxford and came back prematurely to take over his father's newspaper. So it all started with a small newspaper in Adelaide. But Mr. Murdoch had great visions. He was always very driven. And yesterday I spoke to biographer William Shawcross, who's written about Murdoch, and he says this is a man who, even from a little boy, loved to build things. Now, his father had died early. His mother is 102 and still alive, living in Adelaide.
Oh, wow.
So, and he says that Murdoch really was a combination of the two grandfathers. The one was a very modest priest from Scotland, and the one who he takes after more was the swashbuckling gentleman, very debonair and somewhat of a womanizer. But he went on to say that Murdoch, you know, as I say, could read a balance sheet at a glance and always wanted to own things. So he went from Australia, then we know to England. It was the Sun, the Sunday Times, all the publications in England. He owns something like 37% of all newspapers in England, which gives him huge political power. And then in America, he started Fox News, there's the Wall Street Journal, etc., etc. So he has had enormous success. What's going on now is very difficult for him. One of the things, and a major crisis in his life right now, is not being able to acquire Sky B. This was something he wanted to own. They say of Rupert Murdoch, if he doesn't own it, it's because he didn't want it. So right now, facing this enormous crisis, as you know, he's going to be appearing in Parliament with his son James on Tuesday.
Which is not going to be fun.
And this story is changing day by day. I mean, you mentioned Rebecca Brooks. She only resigned yesterday. On Thursday, there was no sign of her. So the story changes all the time. He has also had another failure was in China. He wanted to take over the media in China. Well, the story goes he lost a fortune in China, but he found a wife. He's married to someone who's 42 years younger than him, Wendy Deng. He'd had an affair with her for many years. Divorced his second wife, Anne, who he'd been married to for 38 years. Then married Wendy after only 17 days of being divorced.
Hey, when you know sometimes, right?
Exactly. He has two small children. Believe it or not, Rupert Murdoch is 80. He has an 8- and 10-year-old child. But right now is certainly facing probably the toughest period in his life.
Now, was it always his thought? I mean, he took over a newspaper initially, but this was a businessman who was business-minded versus a journalist. I mean, he saw newspapers and journalism as a business and a way to make money.
Certainly, but he has a passion for newspapers. And with all this criticism that is being meted out against him, many people also attribute him with reviving and maintaining the newspaper industry. So a controversial man indeed. And as I say, speaking to William Shawcross, who speaks in a very laudatory way about him, a balance to what we're hearing about the Murdoch scandal. But this is just the beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see lots of heads roll and much more scandal and intrigue to come, TJ.